everybody. If you have your Bibles with you, I guess we'll go to 2 Timothy chapter 4. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 2. This didn't plan on preaching today, and then the sermon I planned to preach when we got here, this isn't what it is. So, it's very fitting for this verse, though. It says, verse 1, I charge thee, therefore, before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who shall judge the quick and the dead at his appearing in his kingdom, preach the word, be instant in season, out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. I want to look at that instant in season and out of season. This morning when we woke up, plans changed. I'd like to add that God changed the plans. Seasons are not our control. But notice it's not supposed to be what changes us. So instant in season and out of season. Now I know Timothy here was a preacher, and Paul is charging him as a preacher. But Timothy has a lot of things in common with us day to day. Timothy is a last day Christian. We're last day Christians. If you're aware of the biblical timeline, as far as this earth goes, we are right there at the very end of its lifespan. Instant in season and out of season. You know, this morning, I'll say it felt a little out of season. Brother Derek even mentioned, you looking forward to sitting in the church pew at your church this week. And I said, yeah. I was excited for that season. I've been away, and when I'm away, whether I'm gone to preach or whether I'm gone for other reasons, I end up preaching. And it's nice to sit and just take in the word. I didn't think that this was going to be the season today. But to be honest, yesterday, I think all of us thought we would go about this Sunday the same as we have for years. That we would come in. We've gotten too comfortable in our season. When we thought about this at the pew, we came here this morning, we treated this seriously. We thought today through seriously. When I woke up this morning, it was Sunday morning. I looked at the alarm clock. I knew I didn't have to work today, so I didn't get up until about 6:30. Because it's Sunday, and I'm used to a routine on Sunday. Sunday has its own built-in routine in my brain that's been instilled in me growing up. Get up, get dressed. Not even a thought to me whether we should go to church. And that should be a good thing. We should all, whether or not we go to church, shouldn't even be a thought in our minds on Sunday, right? It should just be what we do. But do we still treat with the gravity? Because I've noticed I don't have any gravity to it. This Sunday morning, I was as lackadaisical as could be. Got up, cleaned up, did my routine. And to be honest with you, all that took no thought towards what today is. Took no thought towards this is the Lord's Day. This is a day where Tyler Clark puts all of Tyler Clark's things aside and worships his God. I forgot about that. I had other things on my mind. I wanted to be at the halls early. I wanted to get donuts this morning. I wanted to enjoy church service. I wanted to get to talk to Brother Bryce. These are all the things going through my mind. You know what it wasn't? It was my church and worshiping as a body. That's sad. I'm sad it takes a severe thunderstorm that endangers lives in order to make me really think about coming here. Because then this morning when the weather was bad, it was a serious thought. It really crossed my mind heavy. Is this the right season to go worship at our church? We thought about that. We prayed about it. We considered it. But we shouldn't have to do that for a thunderstorm. It should always be a heavy thought when we prepare to go worship as a church. It should always be something we treat with prayer. I prayed for today's church services more than I have in a long time. I prayed for the safety getting here. I prayed that it would all work out the way the Lord wanted it. I prayed that no matter what state we found the building, that we would just be able to worship. I didn't do that last Sunday. I wasn't here, but I didn't do that the Sunday before. I had done that in a long time. back with me, if you would, one chapter here. Paul warning Timothy. Read 2 This know also that in the last days, that is now, okay? 2,000 years ago, it means we are 2,000 years into the last days. We've made it 2,000 years farther than most Christians expect. Think of it that way. It says, this know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. Paul said, just a chapter later, be instant in season and out of season. He's telling this to a young preacher who he fully expects to see more perilous days than he's lived through. Okay? Paul here in 2 Timothy, he's nearing the end of his life. And it's not because he's getting old. It's because he doesn't expect politicians around him to let him live much longer. These are bad days for Paul. And he writes this letter to Timothy, and he's a lot more blunt in this second letter. He's a lot more personal than he is in the first. I think Paul realizes what he needs to say needs to be said, he needs to get it out. And he says, be instant in season, out of season. If any man in the Bible will say to be instant in season, out of season, it was Paul, man. You couldn't shut him off. Preaching. In prison, everything's going wrong. You just got beat. Let's do it. Singing praises. All the time. Paul understood perilous days. There were entire groups of people, nationalities, that were opposed to what was being preached. They were opposed to what was being done. And he knew that Timothy was going through these days. And he said, this know also that in last days perilous times shall come. Now, all my life, I've read that verse, and I think about the future. I'm like, man, I wonder how bad it's going to get. I don't know how much more of a future we have. I don't know that we're not going to see that, in a lifetime. I've already seen government mandates to shut down churches. How many of us thought we'd ever see that? How did we respond? We got a little taste of it. In countries, there's other countries where it's still government mandated you don't meet in your churches. How are we going to take that? This storm. There's a lot of churches that close. And please don't take me as condemning that. Different churches have different weather. And whatever the Lord led that specific body to do, we are independent and autonomous. Each body is to do what the Lord has that body to do. Our body did what we were told, and the other bodies need to react accordingly. But there are a lot of churches that close today. I'm not saying that to their shame. I'm just saying that to the fact today was perilous. Today we had dangers. Now we recognize all those dangers were at the control of the Lord. They were at His will. But we need to recognize that all dangers are that way. Thunderstorms, or whether certain aspects of our faith become illegal. If you really want to sit down and think about it, if you want to be a fretting, doomsday person, we could list a lot of ways that the government's getting closer and closer to eradicating what we believe. The state of Michigan passed new laws against certain forms of homeschooling that are very dangerous to being able to have your children taught what's right. And all sorts of stuff. You want to look into it. I don't care to read the news much. We know in November a lot of things are going to change. We don't know what. To be honest, it's not really our business. It is. We should hope right, but God has that in control. I'll say this. Whether the guy we want in the office or the guy we don't want in the office gets in, we're going to see perilous days. That's not going to change. Turn with you with 1 Thessalonians 3. 1 Thessalonians chapter 3. I'll be honest, I hate funny Thessalonians. My Bible is not a lot of pages. guess in any Bible, it's not a lot of pages, or at least it shouldn't be. Read with me here. We'll get through some of this chapter. Paul here is writing to this church. Keep in mind, the Thessalonians had fierce oppositions. If you go back in Acts, I believe chapter 17, you might look there a minute. When Paul went there, some of the worst against his preaching was in Thessalonica. The Jews there just steadfastly opposed it to the point they tried to kill him. So this church here is in the middle of that. Think about that. Where they're at is probably one of the worst regions legally to have a church. But there's a church here. And he writes this, chapter 3, Wherefore, when we could no longer forbear, we thought it good to be left in Athens alone. That's where Paul ended up going afterwards. He said, when we could no longer forbear, we thought it good to be left in Athens alone. And sent Timotheus, our brother and minister of God and our fellow laborer in the gospel of Christ, to establish you and to comfort you concerning your faith. You don't need comforting unless you go through hard times. Paul said someone can comfort through church unless he expects trouble. He said that no man should be moved by these afflictions, for yourselves know that we are appointed thereunto. Also that they were appointed to afflictions. To the point he's worried that people would be moved from their faith. This is 2,000 years ago. This is the most immature start of the last days. And we see how serious it is. We've had such an easy number of years here in the United States. The whole world hasn't. Not all of Christianity has. But as a whole, for the past couple, even several hundred years in the United States, we've had it really easy. It's Thessalonians. That can change. I would go as far as we should expect it to change. As last day Christians, I believe we should be surprised. Every day is easy to have our faith. I don't think it's wrong at all. We should be so surprised and thankful. Lord, another day we didn't see persecution. Another day our faith is completely legal and even supported by some of our politicians. These Thessalonians, still meeting, still going to church for them. A lot of thought with that. You don't wake up just, lackadaisical in the morning and go, well, let's go eat at this church. We might get arrested and killed, but that's what I feel like doing today. No. You only went and did that if you were dedicated. You did that with a lot of thought, with a lot of prayer. We should treat our church services the same, whether or not we should, because I think what will happen as the day comes that it's hard to be at church if we aren't used to coming to church with prayer, a lot of thought, and with planning. We just won't come. We were talking about that earlier. Churches have fallen away. What happened? Hard times came. They didn't survive. We should expect it. We should be ready and prepared. The Bible calls us soldiers. That's what Paul told Timothy a little earlier on. Soldiers. Always prepared and ready for battle, whether or not we're at war. If you go on base right now, today, there are men training. There's men preparing, sharpening the skills they have. They're being taught. We're not at war, but they have to be ready. They're soldiers. We're not to the Olympics yet, but I guarantee you right now, probably even today, there are Olympic athletes to be that are running. They're preparing for that run. Maybe today they're eating healthier for the run to come. It doesn't matter if they're running today. They're getting ready today to run. We as Christians, we might not really be in much of a battle today. It's easy to come to church right now. It's even encouraged by most around us right now. But that might not be how it is tomorrow. We should still be ready for battle. We should still be ready for a real race. He goes on to say, verse 4 here, For verily, when we were with you, We told you that before we should suffer tribulation, even as it came to pass. As you know, Paul says, we warned you. We told you this was going to happen. This shouldn't be a surprise. It seemed like this church was struggling with it. He says, for this cause, when I could no longer forbear, I sent to know your faith, lest by some means the tempter have tempted you, and our labor be in vain. Paul was worried about the falling away. He said, but now when Timotheus came from you unto us, and brought us good tidings of your faith and charity, that ye have good remembrance of us always, desiring greatly to see us, as we also see you. Therefore, brethren, we were comforted over you in all our affliction and our distress by your faith. For we now live if ye stand fast in the Lord. You know what this makes me think of? Paul was worried that a fork had fallen. You ever sing, I don't know if you ever sang that hymn here, but I've sung it growing up. Hold the fork, Bryan County. That's what it sounds like. Paul's worried about this church. All the afflictions, all that's going on, the storm around him raging, he's worried. But he's so glad. And Timothy says, Paul, they're still standing. They still believe in this. They still have the same faith as when he left. We should be like that. We'll look in a second here in a little more detail. Look with, if you would, in Acts chapter 12. Acts chapter 12 and verse 12. I won't go into the whole passage here. Peter was arrested. Now James had just been arrested, and they beheaded him. And they arrested Peter with the same plan. Basically, all the Jews were so happy with James's beheading. Herod's like, man, I'm gaining political points. Let's get another apostle, behead him. Man, everybody loved me when I did the last one. Peter's in jail. Now keep in mind, the Lord had told Peter, basically, he was going to die a miserable death. I mean, so I don't imagine this is much of a surprise to Peter. And, let's see. I might have told you the wrong verse here. Let's look at verse 5 first. So Peter's in jail here. It says, Peter therefore was kept in prison, but prayer was made without ceasing of the church unto God for him. Peter's church started praying immediately. They prayed. They were armed for battle. They were ready. Perilous times. What would we do if, remember, one of us was locked up with a death sentence? What would we do as a church? We all run and hide. Woe was us, so scared. We turn to our own resources, try to break him out. I can almost see our church doing that. They all met together and prayed. Skip on down here to verse 12. A lot of things happened. The Lord sent an angel. The angel literally just walked Peter out of the prison. Peter here said, when he considered the thing, he came to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose surname was Mark. Again, they're Baptists. They all have nicknames. Said his surname was Mark, where many were gathered together praying. He went to this house where they all met to pray. While they're praying for Peter, Peter knocks on the door. It said, verse 13, and as Peter knocked at the door of the gate, a damsel came to hearken, named Rhoda. He comes and he knocks on the door. They're all praying for Peter. And the Lord already answered the prayer. He's standing outside. This is what church should do. We should band together and be ready to pray. We know of another church right now, and it looks like they're losing their pastor. The church needs to band together and pray. If we were to find out something that we're losing a member, something's happening, we should be instantly ready to band together. They dropped everything. It doesn't say that after work they got together to pray. It doesn't say when it was convenient, because according to this passage, it's late in the night. How many of us as a church would have maybe a curfew on our prayer time? Well, because we prayed till midnight, it's time to go home and go to bed. I believe that's what this church was doing. They prayed from the time Peter was arrested all the way into the night. And we see here they're still praying for him. They were armed for battle. Look ahead, if you would, to Acts chapter 17. this thought came to mind thinking about our pastor coming. Somebody said something to me, and I joked with them. I said, I don't like being without a pastor. If somebody wants a pastor, they got to get through me first, and at least 2 or 3 other men for sure. And they laughed. And I said, I wasn't kidding. You're not taking a pastor. But look at this in Acts chapter 17 and verse 1. Keep in mind, this is Thessalonica. This is that town that Paul wrote the letter to this church. And all the affliction that we just read about. He said, now when they passed through, they came to Thessalonica, where was a synagogue of the Jews. And Paul, as his manner was, went in unto them, and 3 Sabbath days reasoned with them out of the Scriptures, opening and alleging that Christ must needs have suffered and risen again from the dead, and that this whom I preach unto you is Christ. Some of them believed, and consorted with Paul and Silas, the devout Greeks, a great multitude, but few. But the Jews which believed not, moved with envy, took unto them certain lewd fellows of the baser sort. That's a fancy way to say they took some scum. They got the riffraff of the streets. Said took unto them certain lewd fellows of the baser sort, and gathered a company that set all the city on an uproar. They had a peaceful protest. I mean, I should call it that. Had the city in uproar. Said, and assaulted the house of Jason, and sought to bring them out to the people. What did the city attack? They wanted Paul. They attacked what would be this first church here. Coming Paul. Whether it be the world, the devil, both on the same side, it's going to be attacks on our pastor. But you know what? Attacks on our pastor are aimed at this church. Keep reading with me here. Said, and sought to bring them out to the people. They really weren't after this house of Jason as much. They just wanted mainly Paul. They wanted, give us him. But what does it say in verse 6? And when they found them not, they didn't give them up. When they found them not, they drew Jason and certain brethren unto the roof of the city, crying, these that have turned there also. And these all do contrary to the decrees of Caesar, saying that there is a... They accused him of treason. Can you imagine? This house, these brethren, they're preaching, drug before the Roman court on account of treason by mob. It doesn't look good. It said, and they troubled the people and the rulers of the city when they heard these things. Taken security of Jason and of the other, they let them go. Verse 10 says, the brethren immediately sent away Paul and Silas by night unto Berea, coming thither, and went to the synagogue of the Jews. Thessalonica was under attack from the beginning. They saw hard times. The world attacked them for their preacher. The world's going to attack us for our preacher. We should stand like these men did and protect what gives us. Protect our pastor. He's such a target on him. This whole church does, but our pastor does especially. These perilous days, they're for him too. Look with me in Ephesians chapter 2. This kind of isn't really put together. So I apologize for that. I don't really have an outline of any sort. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 20. Look at verse 19. So now therefore, ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints, and of the household of God. And are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom all building fitly framed together groweth unto a holy temple in the Lord, in whom ye also are builded together for an habitation of God through the Spirit. What Paul here is talking about is the church in Ephesus. He is comparing this church to a house. The Bible compares churches to a lot of things. It compares to a body, it compares to a house, and even a garden. But I want to look here at this analogy of a house. It says, "You're therefore no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens. You're joined together." It said, verse 20, "You're built upon the foundation of the apostles." That was the first church. Every church is true came out of that first church that started with the apostles. And it goes on to say, "And prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom all the building fitly framed together groweth unto the holy temple of the Lord." You know, there's something interesting about this. Where did we all come? I almost wished it was still storming out here for the analogy. I thought about this in the storm, but we all came here together in a building. Why? There's protection. The storm around us outside this morning while Brother Matt was bringing Sunday school for the morning service, it was storming outside. It was raining outside. It was dark outside. But this building is fitly framed together. So a little bit of storm got in, but very, very little compared to what was outside. There's safety in here. It shelters everything outside. Do you have to be a church member to be a Christian? No. There would be a lot of saved who are never church members. Probably more that weren't than are. But there's protection in the church that there isn't anywhere else. There's safety within a church. You know, a house built of stones is pretty sturdy. It doesn't say here in this verse that we're built of stones, but we'll look in a minute. The Lord called Peter a small stone, and himself the cornerstone. The church is built on the cornerstone of Jesus Christ. Every individual, independent, true church has Jesus Christ as the cornerstone. The members are the little stones that build it up. It's kind of like a fort. You know? The storm was a really good analogy this morning. Outside of here is darkness. Outside of here is a lot of danger. There's tumult. There is no peace. When it was storming, there was no peace outside. It was loud. It was thunder. It was lightning. It was a lot darker than we're used to. There was dangers. And a lot of times we get blinded by fleshly eyes. But I think if we view the world spiritually, the world is a very, very dark place spiritually. The world is a very, very dangerous place spiritually. There is no spiritual rest or peace in this world. We're called soldiers. This is a wartime. That's what it's like outside. But when we meet here as a body, not because it's building, but as a body, there's spiritual peace and security and rest and strength in the house. There's safety. When anything's going on, you want to be inside. When tornadoes come, you want to be as tucked in the center of that house as you can be. Deep down in it, drawn as tight as you can. As a church, we should be the same way when dangers come, when there's storms. Paul says that we're in the last days. He said that 2,000 years ago. So we are 2,000 years into the end of time. We should expect storms. So maybe think about that today, how seriously we took church. Do we take this church that seriously? We keep this building in repair. I'm sure after services, sometime we're going to look at that leak to fix it. Because why? It let in some of the storm. Do we treat our church body that way? Do we repair all the leaks, all the cracks, any crevice, any fault in our lives? Why? Because that lets in the storm. When I have faults, when I have unrepented sin, when I'm far from the Lord, when I'm not what I should be, I'm that leak that floods the floor. I might even be the door left wide open. There's accountability there. We are a body. When the building leaks over here, the floodwater can come all over here and ruin everything else. We're going to repair that, I'm sure. I hope we do. we should also repair our church as far as the body spiritually goes. We shouldn't let things go. We can't let problems fester. If we leave that alone, eventually they'll rot out the wall. The drop ceiling will come in. If it gets wet, it'll ruin the new carpet. The baseboard will rot. Great will be the ruin. It'll eat away the pews. Before long, they'll cave in. You know what? There's a church in Clinton, and my boss owns it. It's 100-something years old. It's a gorgeous church building. And about 15 years ago, the roof sprung a little leak. Gorgeous church. People from far away would come hold weddings in it because the architecture is unlike anything around here. It's actually a historical landmark in Clinton. Little leak, not that bad. He said when it first started, it just made a little puddle on the floor. Only when it stormed bad. You know, there's just a little problem, just a little sin. That church right now, 3/4 of the roof has fallen through. The basement has about 12 feet of stagnant water in it, nonstop. The floors are rotted out, you can't walk in it. And it's taped off because it's condemned. You can't even go in there, it's so dangerous. It's completely gone to ruin. That started as a little leak in the roof, just over the fellowship hall, that was never patched, never managed. Little sins, little problems, let the storm in. Because why? It wasn't taken seriously. But yet this morning, before the storm, I didn't take this body seriously. I didn't take the thought of coming to worship on the Lord's Day seriously. That gravity quickly falls away in easy times. But Paul told us to be in season and out of season. How come? Why bother? Because seasons change. They change quick. There's a saying in Michigan, if you don't like the weather, give about 10 minutes. It changes up there faster than almost any state in the country because it's surrounded by lakes. As a kid, I've been swimming and ice skating outside the same week. That's actually, I've seen that happen. Seasons change drastically. How quick did COVID come? My goodness. Met at church, everything normal. We never thought about canceling our services for anything. A couple weeks later, we were discussing whether or not to meet as a body. Stuff changes fast. Shouldn't be surprised by it. Paul told the Thessalonians it was appointed to them. It's just, we don't have an itinerary of what's going to happen. We should just be ready. We should have this body ready. We should have everything patched up, ready for a storm. You don't leave a hole in the roof of the house because it's sunny outside. Oh, look at that. It's not hurt anything. It's pretty outside. When a storm like that comes, it'll be a big problem. Any weaknesses in our church? When the next storm, we've seen some storms as a church. We've seen a lot. Any holes, any problems we have will be made extremely manifest whenever the next storm comes. Not if the next storm comes, when the next storm comes. They always come. Lastly, look with me if you would, Matthew chapter 16. You know, we can take comfort in the fact that we have a church body here. I know Christians. I had a guy ask me that at work Friday. He said, why do you bother with all that church stuff? He goes, I've never had a good luck with churches. He goes, why can't I just be saved and be with God alone? I said, well, you can. He said, there's great benefit in church. Interest plan or something? I had to laugh. I said, no. I said, there's spiritual benefit in church. Safety. You know, we got here today, and we all came inside. We're comfortable-ish. I mean, Eric's always cold. Some of us are always hot, but we're pretty comfortable. We're dry. Most you don't take your shoes off in that back corner. We were comfortable. We were safe. In our church, we're the same way. When we're together as a body, we're safe from a lot of things. Look with me in Matthew chapter 16 and verse 18. famous passage here, speaking about the church. And when I say the church, at this time there is only one church. So you could say the church. Nowadays you can't just say the church because there's a lot of churches that are true. And we don't believe in the universal church. We don't believe that all the churches are one. Each church is like a body. Separate, unique, autonomous, independent, but has to come from another one. That's why the church is referenced to as a body. I came from someone else's body, but I'm not that person. I am not my mother. I am not my father. Same thing with churches. We are not the church we came out of. We're the same type of body. We're the same type of church, but we're different. We're independent. We're not all one. We're separate bodies. Churches are the same way, so I clarify that when I said the church. Matthew chapter 16 and verse 17. Jesus answered and said unto him, Blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood hath not revealed unto thee, but my Father which is in heaven. And I say also unto thee that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. This is a very wildly misused verse in a lot of denominations. Just to clarify, in my Bible I have parentheses around thou art Peter, because if you break this verse down, you diagram it, you need to understand the next phrase is not to Peter. Jesus Christ, he said, thou art Peter. Now, proper grammar, he would say, and upon your rock, or upon that rock, if he was talking about Peter, but he's not. He says, upon this rock. Thou art Peter, and upon this rock. What does it say? I will build my church. Now, we know that rock he's talking about is himself, the chief cornerstone. This rock. But he calls Peter, later on, Cephas. It means a small stone. There's a difference. We'll clarify that. But I want to look at the ending of this verse. He says, I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. We're not going to lose. The stronghold of the Lord's true churches will last until he comes back. There will still be faithful churches when he comes back. There's no biblical reason we shouldn't be one of them. I can find absolutely no biblical grounds to say that Faith Baptist Church in Murray, Kentucky should not be here and believe the same things when the Lord Jesus comes back, whether that's today or 100 years from now. Notice he said the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I always read this verse and just a year ago preached something. I always thought that meant that when hell attacked us as a church, we would survive. That's true. Hell will attack and we will survive. But you know what? The gates aren't the offensive part of a battle. If the battle's taking place at the gates, that means you have taken the battle there. The gates aren't the fighting part of hell. That's hell's defense. It means hell will lose. Satan will lose. We don't think about that often. We give the devil a lot more credit than he's due. The devil is very scary, very smart, smarter than we are, knows the Bible better than we do. He's been around a lot longer. He's seen God face to face. He knows God in some ways more than we do. He doesn't know him better than we do. He knows about him more than we do. He doesn't know him personally like we do. There's a big difference. The devil cannot win. He does not have direct power over us, especially not as a church. There's safety in that. Anyone knows when you go to war, a soldier is not an army. It's not. You go in a group. The bigger the group, the better, usually. Same as a church. We are better as a group, a whole body. When you fight, you're best to use your whole body. It should function. It should all function properly. If I go to wrestle Brother Derek, like we'll probably do this afternoon, if I just wrestle him with one arm, I might lose. If I wrestle him with both my arms, and legs, and head, and bite him, I can probably win. Use your whole body. That wasn't meant to be a joke. None of us would go into a fight expecting just our hand to do the work. Maybe nowadays we would, just pull the trigger, but even still, we wouldn't go into a fight with someone planning on the hand doing all the work. The rest of me is not going to fight. A church is the same way. I'll say this, but we can't expect our pastor to fight the battles. He is just one member of the body. He's just one part. He needs the entire body in shape and moving in the battle. I say it's more so our responsibility. Now, true, he's accountable. Ever thought about that? I'll just say it because I'm not a pastor. I'm, kind of feel like a guy with a rope around my neck watching hangings all around me. Like my day's probably coming. But how scary it must be to be accountable for one of the Lord's true churches. Especially that church doesn't do what it's supposed to. And I couldn't make them do it. That's scary. Think of it this way. Not as in a poor me sense, but let's say you've got 3 or 4 kids and you're walking them and your job is to help those 3 kids cross the street safely. You're accountable for that. You're accountable for those kids to get across the street safely. But you know what? If the 3 of them won't listen to you, if they run around with their eyes closed and they won't do what they tell you to and they won't stay close, you still can't control that situation, right? But you're still accountable. That's the way I see a pastor. He has a whole group of sheep, a whole group of children, and they're trying to cross a very busy street that hates them. Doesn't want anything to happen to them. What does he need those children to do? He needs them to all act properly. We all need to act properly. We need to have the holes patched. We need to take this body seriously. We need to take Sundays seriously. We need to have love for it. I've thought about that. There's certain things in my life that take a lot of attention that make me willing to drive. I'd be willing to drive probably unlimited hours. Will we do that for the Lord? How many of us drive so many hours for vacation? Do we drive that to meet with God? A lot of things that I think have lost their gravity because it's easy. How many of us think every day about really ponder, where am I going to get water? Never once thought about that as a big deal. Until one day I was hunting with Dad and we realized we didn't bring any water and there was no fresh water there. A lot of things you don't think about until it's too late. All of a sudden, water became more important to me than it ever had been in my life. I didn't have any. By then, it's a little too late. I had to put forethought into it. Same thing with food. We're blessed to live in America where there's not nearly as many hungry people as there are in most countries. I don't think any of us have ever probably faced real hunger where we couldn't obtain food by any legal means. But if you get to that point, all of a sudden it's very gravity to you. We treat that very jokingly. What do we want to eat? Oh, I don't know. Maybe this, maybe that. We're that way about church. What time to leave for church? Oh, I don't know. Maybe that, maybe. It should be very serious. Something thought out. Something maybe we have been without. Money. How often have we stressed over the gravity of money? Do we ever put the same stress and gravity towards the church? It's a fair question. I can think of times in my life where I've spent every waking minute of the day in the week stressing about getting the money to pay my bills. I can think very few times in my life where I have spent every day of the week pondering and praying and thinking about the gravity of my church. Few occasions. That's shameful. It should be all the time. This is important. You would always upkeep before battle. You would always maintain a house seriously all the time. You'd be instant in season and out of season. Today was one of those out of season days. We need to be ready for this every week. There might come a day where thunderstorms aren't what we're worried about meeting. There may come a day where we get a text, police are in the building waiting for us. Where are we going to meet this time? That's a realistic possibility. We should be ready for that. We should be ready for, COVID to come back. I don't know. It's election time. That's when COVID gets really bad. You never know. But that's all I have this afternoon. I don't know what we want to do, or want to have a song, or Brother Derek's coming.